Live from Camp David, a special edition of Meet the Press with Tim Russert. An exclusive interview with Vice President Dick Cheney.
And we are at Green Top in the shadows of the presidential retreat at Camp David. Mr. Vice President, good morning and welcome.
Morning, Tim.
This is the first television program to originate from here, which underscores the seriousness of our discussion this morning. The President, the Vice President, the National Security Team have been meeting for the last 36 hours. What can you share with the American people this morning?
Well, Tim, this is the first chance we've had really since the events this week to sit down and really focus on various plans and propositions, things we ought to be doing going forward. Up till now, it's been focused very much on trying to manage the crisis and to deal with the problems of the immediate situation. But yesterday, we've been able to come up and get everybody together. A lot of work done, staff work done in preparation for it, and sit down and really spend some time looking at what our strategy ought to be and how we ought to proceed.
When the President went to the World Trade Center on Friday, he said, the people who did this will hear from all of us soon. There's an expectation in the country that we're about to pay back big time quickly. What should the American people think or feel about that?
I think the important thing here, Tim, is for people to understand that things have changed since last Tuesday. The world's shifted in some respects. Clearly what we're faced with here is a situation where terrorism has struck home in the United States. We've been subject to targets of terrorist attacks before, especially overseas with our forces and American personnel overseas. But this time, because of what happened in New York and what happened in Washington, it's a qualitatively different set of circumstances. It's also important for people to understand that this is a long-term proposition. It's not like, even Desert Storm, where we had a build-up for a few months, 4 days of combat, and it was over with. This is going to be the kind of work that will probably take years, because the focus has to be not just on any one individual. The problem here is terrorism. And even in this particular instance, it looks as though the responsible organization was a group called Al-Qaeda. It's Arabic for the base.
That's Osama bin Laden.
He headed it up and organized it, but it's a very broad, kind of loose coalition of groupings. It includes not only his forces, but it also includes, for example, Islamic Jihad from Egypt. It includes a movement from Uzbekistan. The groups that are terrorist organizations, people that oftentimes move around them, sometimes share common ideologies that operate on a worldwide basis. And what we have to do is take down those networks of terrorist organizations. And as I say, I think this is going to be a struggle that the United States is going to be involved in for the foreseeable future. There's not going to be an end date when I'm going to say there it's all over with. It's going to require constant vigilance on our part to avoid problems in the future, but it's also going to require a major effort and obviously quite possibly the use of military force.
Do you believe that anyone who participated in the events on Tuesday, or in fact even a support role, or on a plane that wasn't successfully hijacked, are they still at large in the United States?
We don't know. The possibility clearly exists that there could be additional terrorists out there that were part of this operation that maybe got cold feet and didn't get on the airplane, or for one reason or another were thwarted in their efforts. We have to assume that possibility exists. We had these 19 individuals in the United States, some of them for several years, training, preparing, getting ready for this operation. And we can by no means assume now that that's all there is. There may well be other operations that have been planned and are, in fact, in the works.
When the President said, everyone in uniform, get ready, does that suggest a massive call-up of reserves?
We've had some reserve call-up. We called up, of course, 35,000 reservists. We felt that was important to do here. I think the way to think about it, Tim, is to think about the target and what our objectives are here. Obviously, we're interested in individuals who were directly involved in planning, coordinating, ordering the attack. But those tend to be individuals or small groupings of individuals, cells perhaps, various places around the world. We need to go find them and root them out. But we also, what's different here, what's changed in terms of U.S. policy is the President's determination to also go after those nations and organizations and people that lend support to these terrorist operators. If you've got a nation out there now that has provided a base, training facilities, a sanctuary, as has been true, for example, in this case probably with Afghanistan, then they have to understand, and others like them around the world have to understand, that if you provide sanctuary to terrorists, you face the full wrath of the United States of America, and that we will, in fact, aggressively go after these nations to make certain that they cease and desist from providing support for these kinds of organizations.
Full wrath. That's a very strong statement to the Afghans this morning.
It is indeed.
The president said that Osama bin Laden was the prime suspect. Why?
There's just a lot of evidence to link his organization, the Al-Qaeda organization, and he's the head of Al-Qaeda, to this operation. There's some ties, for example, to some of the people involved here back to the USS Cole bombing in Yemen. We're able to tell, going back now, looking at relationships and the way they've operated in the past, we're quite confident that, in fact, as the president said, he is the prime suspect. That doesn't mean we know all there is to know yet. That doesn't mean there weren't others involved. As I mentioned, the Egyptian Islamic Jihad has a very close working relationship with this organization. So there may well be others. We want to continue to investigate aggressively to make sure we've wrapped up and understand fully all who were involved. But clearly the evidence at this point takes us very much in that direction.
You have no doubt that Osama bin Laden played some role in this.
I have no doubt that he and his organization played a significant role in this.
Were you surprised by the precision and sophistication of the operation?
Well, certainly we were surprised in the sense that there had been information coming in that a big operation was planned, but that's sort of a trend that you see all the time in these kinds of reports. But we did
no specific threat.
No specific threat involving really a domestic operation or involving what happened, obviously, the cities, airliner, and so forth. We did go on alert with our overseas forces a number of times during the course of the summer when we thought the threat level had risen significantly. So clearly we were surprised by what happened here. On the other hand, in terms of the sophistication of it, it's interesting to look at, because clearly what happened is you got some people committed to die in the course of the operation. You got them visas, got them entered to the United States. They came here, some of them enrolled in our commercial aviation schools and learned to fly, courtesy of our own capabilities here in the United States. Then what they needed in order to execute was some degree of coordination, obviously, in terms of timing. But they needed knives, cardboard cutters, razor blades, whatever it was, and an airline ticket. And that's it. They then were able to take over the aircraft and use our own, heavily loaded with fuel, large aircraft to take.
Intentionally choosing planes that had lots of fuel and few passengers.
It certainly looks that way. And so the sophisticated, on the one hand, it's very simple. It doesn't involve a lot of hardware or complex devices that they have to bring into the United States. They, in effect, turn some of our own system against us. But its simplicity does, in fact, also speak volumes in terms of planning, creativity, ingenuity in terms of how they go about these kinds of operations.
We clearly will have to revisit our visa procedures.
We've got to look at all aspects of the operation here in terms of what happened. Clearly, there are going to be a lot of lessons to be learned from it. But it's important for us, too, not to get trapped into thinking if we just guard against another situation where terrorists can hijack airplanes and use them to hit vital targets in the U.S., that we've dealt with the problem. I'm sure they're out there right now thinking about new, creative ways to come after us that don't involve any of those techniques at all. It's something totally new.
Osama bin Laden released a training video, 100 minutes long, which was obtained by the Western media this summer. And I want to show a portion of that to you and give you a chance to respond to it, and we'll play it right now. These are followers of his chanting, "We have to fight every day, even to the shedding of blood in God's righteous path." There he is himself with his own rifle. They go on to say, "We thank God for granting us victory the day we destroyed the Cole in the sea." That's a USS destroyer that was hit last year. Those are his supporters marching. There you are, as Secretary of Defense visiting Saudi Arabia, used in this video to rally support for Osama bin Laden. And bin Laden himself, "We have to practice the way of the suicidal commandos of faith and the heroism of the resistance fighter. And we refuse their culture, and we will take advantage of their misfortunes and the blood of their wounded." He goes on to say, Mr. Secretary, that with small capabilities we can defeat the U.S. America is much weaker than it appears. What's your message this morning to Osama bin Laden?
Well, I think he seriously misreads the American people. I think you have to ask yourself why somebody would do what he does. Why is someone so motivated? Obviously, he's filled with hate for the United States and for everything we stand for.
Why?
Freedom and democracy.
Why does he hate us so much?
It must have something to do with his background, his own upbringing. He's the son of a prominent Saudi family, successful business group with significant wealth. He went and served in Afghanistan with the Mujahideen during the war against the Russians. And he has, for whatever reason, developed this intense hatred of everything that relates to the United States. And his objective, obviously, is to try to influence our behavior, to force us to withdraw from that part of the world. And clearly, he's not going to be successful.
He has stated unequivocally that he wants the United States out of the Middle East. He no longer wants the United States to be the ally of Israel. Will our relationship with Israel change in any way, shape, or form because of this event?
No. The fact of the matter is that will not allow him to achieve his aims. We're not about to change our policies or change our basic fundamental beliefs. What we are going to do is aggressively go after Mr. bin Laden, obviously, and all of his associates. And even if it takes a long time, I'm convinced eventually we'll prevail.
There is an FBI wanted poster, and there he is himself, wanted for the murder of U.S. nationals outside the United States. He's under indictment for his involvement in blowing up embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. Could we say to the Afghanistan government, you are harboring a fugitive from justice, give him over in 48 hours, or we're coming in and taking him?
We could say such a thing.
Legally?
Well, legally, certainly. I'll simply restate again, Tim, I don't want to get into the business of predicting what specific steps we will take, but without question, the President has been very, very clear that to harbor terrorists is to, in effect, accept a certain degree of guilt for the acts that they commit. And the government of Afghanistan has to understand that we believe they have indeed been harboring a man who committed, whose organization committed this most recent egregious act.
You're convinced he's still in Afghanistan?
We don't know.
Is there any international law or United States law which would prohibit us from killing him if we found him?
Not in my estimation, Tim. But I'd have to check with the lawyers on that, obviously. Lawyers always have a role to play. But one of the intriguing things here is the way in which people have rallied around, other governments have rallied around this notion that, in fact, this is a war. We've seen our NATO allies, for the first time in history, invoke Article 5. An attack against one is an attack against all. It's never before been done. They unanimously agreed to that proposition earlier this week in Brussels. I think the world increasingly will understand that what we have here are a group of barbarians, that they threaten all of us, that the U.S. is the target of the moment. But one of the things to remember is if you look at the roster of countries who lost people in the bombing in New York, over 40 countries have had someone killed or have significant numbers missing. The British, for example, have an estimated 100 dead and 500 to 700 still missing. So it's an attack not just upon the United States, but upon civilized society.
A very important country in all this is Pakistan, on the border of Afghanistan. Pakistan, there are reports on the wires today, has sent a delegation to the Taliban government in Afghanistan saying it's time to turn Osama bin Laden over. The Pakistan government is also saying to its people this morning, we will get more aid from the United States. The United States will lift economic sanctions against us. And we've been given assurances that the Indian government and the Israeli government will not be part of any military operation based in Pakistan. Can you confirm that?
I've seen some communication back and forth at this point. Let me simply say we have had discussions with the PACs. President Bush called President Musharraf just yesterday afternoon from Camp David. They've had a good conversation. We have made certain requests of the Pakistanis. They have agreed to work with us in this endeavor, and some of that's covered in the statement they've made there.
They will get more assistance from us.
Well, we'd like to